competitive stalking. Have you ever heard of competitive stalking? If you're ever unfortunate enough to have a stalker, pray to God that he's stupid, that he's sloppy, forgetful, and never thinks about consequences. Let him leave prints where he shouldn't. Make mistakes. Always be in a rush. But God help you if you ever encounter someone who is meticulous, patient, and intelligent. If that kind of person is watching you, you might not notice for years. Years of your life will be neatly filed away in someone else's memory. Maybe someone is following you right now and you have no idea. Maybe that strange heaviness in your chest has a very real reason behind it. Do me a favor. Check your home for empty spaces, places where a person could hide. Check your food. Photograph your belongings before you leave and compare them to how they're arranged when you get back. Look over your shoulder. Always look over your shoulder. Draw the curtains. And whatever you do, never be alone. Now, never thought I fit the role of a victim. I'm not one of those popular, pretty, extroverted girls that everyone gravitates toward. My best friend is my mom. My appearance is completely ordinary. I'm not particularly bright or charismatic either. Honestly, there's nothing interesting about my life at all. Well, except for the fact that I operate in the gray zones of the internet and occasionally do things that could land me in serious legal trouble in this country. Other than that, deadly boring. But it was precisely because of the nature of my work that I found out about my stalker, stalkers, plural, and about competitive stalking in general. Some of my deals happen in person, but certain orders come in online. For that, I use the darknet. I won't go into the details of how I operate. I think you understand why. I'll just say that I always keep strictly to business and never get too curious. Sometimes I come across hitmen's ads or forums with photos of sleeping people, but nothing truly insane. Competitive stalking. That's what the community I stumbled upon was dedicated to. I won't name the site or give any links. I don't want to spread that filth. But I found discussion threads where people were bragging about their trophies. I'm a woman and I love stalking men. It gives me some kind of feeling of power. Right now, I'm choosing between these two. She had attached files. I just can't decide. It's like they're competing for my attention. Nobody ever suspects a woman. Everyone only looks at men. And that turns me on so much. Come on, you're watching him too. I've been tracking him since he turned 22. He's so hot, and his life has gotten so much better since I came into it. I suggest you back off and focus on your playboy. Do you even know anything about him? I know how many minutes he spends in the shower, what he jerks off to, and how much money is in his bank account. I have his medical records and his list of favorite TV shows. Oh, please, spare me. I was at his place the other day, watched him have dinner. I know, I saw you. Where were you hiding? Like I'd tell you that. There were dozens of threads like this. Exchanges between people who were all following the same person or just posts seeking validation with comments like, "Congrats, great work." I saw photos of people inside their own homes, naked, sleeping, even selfies. Shots taken from ventilation shafts, closets, or through door peepholes. I saw some truly twisted things too, but I won't get into that. I'm in love with him. I even look after her kids I wait outside their school. Sometimes I talk to them, ask them about their mommy. You know how easy it would be for me to just take one. That user was completely anonymous with no hints about the victim's identity. I kept scrolling, unable to stop. The same morbid curiosity that makes people stare at car crashes. Last night she made a great chili. Here's a photo of her underwear. Isn't that sweet? I talk to her all the time and she doesn't even know it's me. She's not exactly a saint herself. You know, in quiet little nowhere town. Just a run-down third-floor apartment. Doesn't talk to anyone, but she deals. It's so funny watching her. I watch her from her window constantly. Hilarious when she cries herself to sleep. Once I managed to get inside, but I had to jump out the window because she came back early. Wait, you mean there in the next line was my full legal name? Yeah, so what? I'm at her place right now. I can't describe what I felt in that moment, and I pray you never have to feel it. For a minute, I simply couldn't think. I just stared at the message until I forced myself to look at the date. The post was written 3 days ago. Where was I then? I was home. Maybe they left. Nobody can sit inside a wall for 3 days. God, I didn't even know my walls had hollow spaces. I jumped up from my desk and started darting around the apartment, shoving furniture aside, frantically checking every corner. Finally, I looked in the refrigerator. Maybe it was paranoia, but I could have sworn someone had been carefully opening the containers and eating tiny amounts, just enough to be almost unnoticeable. I found no hidden passages. I went back to the monitor. Nice. How did you get in? Not telling. Maybe someday you'll be as good as me. I go out into the room constantly and watch her while she sleeps. I don't believe you. I was frantically scanning the lines while dialing my mom's number. She answered almost immediately. Hello, sweetheart. Is everything okay? Mom, I think someone is following me. I found a website. There are stalkers talking about me. A pause. What? I'm so good at what I do that I hacked her phone and laptop. I can see everything on her screen. Get in line, you. I froze with the phone in my hand. I thought I heard a faint scratching from the living room. Slow, careful, like fingernails feeling along wood. I have to go. I'll call you back. As I was pulling on my jacket, I glanced one last time at the monitor. My mom on the other end of the line had gone into a panic, bombarding me with questions I didn't have answers to. The final message stopped me dead. I don't care. You're just a spectator, an observer. I'm a player. I'm in real contact with her. I've been talking to her on the phone for months, and she thinks it's her mother. The shadow in our house. My father had one rule. We were forbidden from acknowledging my mother's existence. I broke it, and now I understand why he made it. I need to start from the beginning. I need to try to make sense of everything, if only for my own sake. For as long as I can remember, my life was governed by one unspoken rule. It was never said aloud, never written down, never explained. I learned it through punishing silence, through my father's sharp warning glances, through the very atmosphere of the house. Heavy enough to feel it on your skin. The rule was simple. We don't acknowledge that she's here. She was my mother. She lived in this house with us. She was just as tangible and real as the dinner table we sat at every evening or the staircase I climbed to my bedroom. But for my father, and therefore for me, she was a ghost we had agreed not to see. Every morning she was in the kitchen when I came downstairs for breakfast. She stood at the stove in her floral apron, turned around and smiled at me. It was always a sad smile. Good morning, sweetheart, she said in a soft voice like rustling leaves. And every morning I looked straight through her. My eyes were fixed on the coffee pot on the counter behind her. I grabbed a bowl from the cabinet, poured my cereal, and sat down at the table. My father was already there, hidden behind his newspaper, a silent monolith. She sighed, making a tiny deflated sound, and set a third plate on the table between us. Scrambled eggs or pancakes, always perfectly cooked, always destined to go cold. We ate in silence. The only sounds were the clinking of spoons against ceramic and the rustle of my father's newspaper. The third plate sat there like evidence of our collective madness, a steaming, fragrant accusation. She sat in her chair, hands folded in her lap, watching us eat with hope and despair on her face. Sometimes she tried to start a conversation. "Looks like rain today," she would say timidly. "You should take an umbrella to school." My father simply turned the page. The crackle of newspaper in the quiet room was sharp and dismissive. I took a loud sip of my drink, focusing on the crunch of my cereal, on anything but the sound of her voice. After a while, she would fall silent. The hope would drain from her face, leaving behind the familiar deep sadness. Dinner was the same. She cooked full meals that smelled incredible: fried chicken, fresh bread. She set the table for 3 with napkins and silverware. My father and I would sit down, and she would serve us, ladling food onto our plates with graceful, practiced movements. Then she would sit down herself and try to draw us into conversation. "How was work today?" she'd ask my father. He'd grunt, methodically cutting his meat into neat geometric pieces. "What about school? Didn't you have that big test today?" she'd ask me. I'd mumble something incoherent, staring into my plate and shoveling food into my mouth so I wouldn't have to answer. The performance was suffocating. It was a constant, exhausting pretense. Every single day was a rehearsal and a live performance, pretending that this woman, my own mother, didn't exist. I grew up in a house of 3, but was raised in a world that acknowledged only 2. For years, I simply accepted it. Children accept the most extraordinary circumstances as normal because it's all they know. The sun rises, the sky is blue. We don't talk to Mom. Just a fact of life. I learned to ignore her, to blur her image at the edges of my peripheral vision. She became part of the background, like a painting on the wall you stop noticing. My perception of my father changed too. The silent, stoic man I'd once seen as a protector began to look like a tyrant. His rule was strange and cruel. It was a calculated daily act of emotional violence. What had she done to deserve this? Had she cheated on him? Done something unforgivable that I was too young to remember? Whatever it was, the punishment seemed monstrously disproportionate. It was cold, quiet torture, and he had made me his accomplice. The resentment grew slowly, like pressure building under my ribs. I started having trouble sleeping. I'd lie in bed and hear the soft sounds of her crying from their bedroom. Muffled sobs, the kind you make when you're trying not to wake anyone up. It broke my heart. How could my father lie next to her every night, hear that and do nothing? What kind of man was he? I began to see something grotesque in his actions, a form of total control. He had erased her, stripped her of her voice, her presence, her very existence within the family she had built. And I had helped him. With every silent breakfast, every ignored question, I had tightened the screws. The breaking point came last Tuesday. It was a miserable, rainy day, the kind that turns the whole world gray and wet. I was in the living room, trying to read, but the words kept blurring before my eyes. She walked in and stood by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. She wasn't trying to talk. She just stood there, watching a world she was part of but couldn't reach. Then she began to hum. Just a sad, gentle lullaby, a melody that felt vaguely familiar, like a half-remembered dream. I felt a lump in my throat. I could see her reflection in the dark glass, a translucent figure against the swaying, storm-tossed trees. Her shoulders were barely trembling. She was crying again, silently. Something inside me snapped. Years of accumulated guilt, of secret rebellion, of love for this woman I was never allowed to know. All of it came flooding out. This was wrong. This entire life was fundamentally, grotesquely wrong. I couldn't be part of it anymore. I waited until I heard my father's car pull away. He always drove to the hardware store on Tuesdays, his ritual, a couple of hours of solitude. The house settled into a different kind of silence. Not the forced kind, just an emptiness. But the house wasn't empty. She was still there. I found her in the kitchen. She was washing dishes with her back to me. My heart was hammering so hard against my ribs it seemed like she should be able to hear it. My mouth was dry. It felt like I was about to break a law of physics, like the universe itself might crack if I spoke. I took a deep breath. Mom. The word felt foreign in my mouth, heavy and clumsy. She froze. Her hands, submerged in soapy water, went still. The silence that followed was deeper than any I had ever known in that house. It lasted an eternity. She turned around slowly. Her face was a mask of disbelief. Her eyes, wide open and glistening with tears, locked onto mine. She looked at me as though she were witnessing a miracle. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She just stared, and her expression shifted from shock to a radiant, luminous joy so pure it was almost painful to look at. You can see me," she whispered. Her voice trembled with emotion. A single tear slid down her cheek. "Oh, my darling boy, you finally see me." Her words confused me. They sounded strange, not quite right for the situation. I took a step closer. "What do you mean?" I said unsteadily. "I've always been able to see you. I see you every day." She frowned, puzzled, but the smile wouldn't leave her face. She seemed unable to let it go. "But you never looked at me." "That was Dad," I said, and that word tasted like poison on my tongue. It was him. He was the one who told me not to. It was his rule. I was a child. I was scared. I didn't know what to do. But I'm not a child anymore, and this is wrong. What he's doing to you, it's wrong. Understanding crossed her face, replaced by a shadow of that old sadness. She took my hand. Her skin was cold, surprisingly cold, like marble that had been sitting in a cellar. But her grip was firm, real. "Your father," she began, and then her voice faded. She shook her head. "He's had a hard time. He does what he thinks is right." She paused. "But now everything is fine. This will be our secret, just between us." I nodded. My throat was too tight to speak. The relief that washed over me was enormous, as if I had been holding my breath my entire life and was finally allowed to exhale. We stood in the quiet kitchen for a long time, just holding hands. She told me how much she loved me, how she had watched me grow up, how proud she was of the man I was becoming. She asked about school, about friends, about my life. It poured out of her in a flood, years of unspoken love and curiosity all at once. We talked until we heard the sound of my father's car on the gravel. We were seized by sudden panic. She squeezed my hand one last time with a conspiratorial smile. "Our secret," she whispered, then turned back to the sink and continued washing dishes as if nothing had happened. I flew out of the kitchen, heart pounding, and made it to my room just as the front door opened. The rest of the evening passed in the familiar, suffocating silence, but this time it was different. The silence was charged with my secret. When she looked at me across the dinner table, there was a new light in her eyes, a shared knowledge. For the first time in my life, I felt like I had an ally in this house. We continued our secret conversations over the next few days. Whenever my father was out, we talked. I learned about her favorite books, the music she loved, the places she dreamed of visiting. She was bright and funny and intelligent. She was a whole, complete person, someone my father had tried to bury. And with every word we shared, I felt like I was helping to pull her out of the grave he had dug for her. My rage at him grew with each passing day. He was a monster, a quiet, methodical monster who had stolen my mother from me. I began to think about what to do. Should I confront him directly? Should I just take her and leave? A fierce, protective instinct I had never known before rose up in me. I won't let him hurt her anymore. And then yesterday morning came. I woke up and the house was silent. Too silent. No smell of brewing coffee. No sound of my father's morning news radio program. I lay in bed for a while waiting, but the silence stretched on, unnatural, unsettling. Finally, I got up and went downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The coffee pot was cold. The newspaper was still on the front step. A chill ran down my spine. I checked the whole ground floor. Nobody. I went upstairs and knocked on their bedroom door. No answer. I pushed it open. The room was empty. The bed was neatly made. My father's wardrobe was open, his clothes hanging in their usual immaculate rows. Her side was the same. Nothing seemed out of place, but their absence felt like a screaming void. Panic started rising. I checked the garage. His car was gone. My first thought was that he'd left early for work, but he never did that without telling me. And where was she? Had he taken her somewhere? That thought pierced me with fear. Had he found out about our secret? I spent the whole day in mounting dread. I called my father's mobile a dozen times. Every call went straight to voicemail. I called his office. His secretary said he hadn't come in, which had never happened before. I had no idea who to call about her. She didn't have a mobile phone. She had no friends that I knew of. Her entire world was contained within the walls of our house. By evening, I was falling apart. I paced the empty rooms. The silence of the house pressed down on me. He heard her. He took her somewhere to punish her, to punish me. The darkest possibilities began spiraling through my mind. I had to do something. Find some clue. Anything that might tell me where they'd gone. The search led me back to their bedroom. Going through their things felt like a violation, but I was desperate. I searched everywhere, drawers, under the bed, inside the wardrobe. Nothing. Just a room that was unsettlingly clean and impersonal. And then I saw it. On the floor of my father's closet, behind a row of shoes, sat a small wooden box. I had never seen it before. It wasn't locked. My hands were trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside were diaries, a stack of identical black notebooks with leather covers, the kind my father used for work. I took the one on top. Its pages were filled with his neat, precise handwriting. The first entry was dated more than 15 years ago. I sat down on the edge of the bed. The faint smell of his cologne still clung to the pillows, and I began to read. October 12th. 1 year. 1 year since the accident. The house feels so empty, hollowed out. I look at my son. I see her eyes, and the pain is as fresh as if it happened yesterday. He's only 3. He's too young to understand. He just asks for mommy. How do you explain to a 3-year-old that she's never coming back? The police report called it an accident, a severed power line during the storm. Wrong place, wrong time. It doesn't feel like an accident. It feels like a theft. The world stole her from us. My blood ran cold. I read the entry again, then a third time. An accident. She had died? No, that was impossible. I'd talked to her yesterday. I'd held her hand. There had to be a mistake. Another diary. Something else? But it was his handwriting, his room. I kept reading, feeling a cold horror coil in my stomach. May 3rd, 2 years later. He did it again today. He was playing in the living room with his blocks, then suddenly froze and pointed toward the kitchen. He said, "Mommy is baking cookies." I went in, of course. The kitchen was empty. I told him that Mommy is in heaven, like we've practiced. He just shook his head. "No, she's right there," he said, and described her. He described the yellow dress she was buried in. I felt something go cold inside me that had nothing to do with the temperature in the room. He's 5. It's just his imagination running wild. That's all. May 28th. This is not imagination. He talks to her every day now. I've started seeing flickers, movement at the edge of my vision when he says she's passing by. A faint trace of her perfume in a room she supposedly just left. This morning I was in the hallway while he was in his room chattering nonstop. I asked who he was talking to. "Mommy," he said. "She's singing me a song." And then I heard it, faintly through the door. The lullaby, the one she used to sing to him. I felt sick. June 15th. Today I came face to face with it. My son was sitting on the sofa, talking to the empty space beside him. I stood in the doorway and said her name. I asked what it wanted. My son looked at me with fear in his eyes, and the air in the room went heavy and cold. The pressure squeezed my eardrums. I felt the hatred emanating from that spot. Pure hatred, directed at me. It looked like her, sounded like her. But when I forced myself to look at the place my son was staring at, I saw it, just for a second. Her outline was there, but the eyes were black hollows, empty, ancient, wrong. That thing is not my wife. My wife is gone. This is something else. A parasite wearing her memory. I couldn't breathe. A wave of nausea hit me. This was madness. He had lost his mind. He was grieving. He had gone insane. It had to be that. I gripped the diary tighter. My knuckles went white. July 1st. I've tried everything. Priests, mediums, paranormal researchers. They either think I'm crazy or they leave the house pale and shaking, saying they can't help. One of them told me it's a mimic, a shadow. He said it feeds on grief, on my son's energy, and that it will apparently never leave us. Even if we move, it will follow. He said the worst thing we could do is give it what it wants. Recognition. Attention is its food. Your acknowledgement is its power. If we feed it, it grows stronger. It will latch onto the boy. It will consume him. So I have a plan. A terrible, cruel plan. It will make my son hate me. It will make me a monster in his eyes. But it's the only thing I can think of to protect him. We have to starve it. We have to pretend it isn't there. We will cut off its feeding. We will not look at it. We will not speak to it. We will not acknowledge its existence. We will live in a house with a ghost and pretend we are alone. God forgive me for what I'm about to do to my own child. The diary slipped from my hands and hit the carpet with a dull thud. The room was spinning. Every memory of my childhood, every silent dinner, every sharp glance from my father, rearranged itself in my mind into a new and nightmarish picture. I grabbed the last diary, this year's. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the pages. I found the entry from last week, Tuesday. Today he spoke to it. I knew it would happen. I've seen how he's been looking at it lately. The guilt in his eyes. He thinks I'm the villain. I suppose I am. I'd rather know he hates me but is safe than know he loves me and is destroyed. But now he's broken the rule. He opened the door. When I came home, the air in the house was different, thicker, charged, and it looked stronger, more tangible. The sorrow in its eyes had been replaced by something else. Triumph. I have to end this. That old man who called it a mimic gave me a last resort, a last option. He said if it ever truly anchored itself here, if it received enough sustenance to fully take root, there is a ritual, a way to bind it, but it requires a sacrifice, an exchange, an anchor for an anchor. He said it would likely kill me. But what kind of life have I been living all this time? A jailer in my own home, hated by my own son. If that's the price to set him free, I'll pay it. He's talking to it again. I can hear them whispering in the kitchen. I love you, son. I hope someday you'll understand. I hope you'll forgive me. That was the last entry. So his disappearance. The empty car. He had gone to perform the ritual, to sacrifice himself to save me from the thing that had taken the shape of my mother. Ice spread through my chest. I remembered her hand in mine, how cold her skin had been. I remembered her words. You finally see me, as though my sight were something that needed to be earned. I remembered the triumphant look in her eyes across the dinner table. And then I heard it, a soft, sweet sound from downstairs, humming. That same strange melody she'd been humming at the window. A floorboard creaked in the hallway below. Then another, slow, deliberate, as if fingernails carefully testing wood. I have to go. I'll talk to you later. I yanked on my jacket, grabbed my keys. My mother's voice on the other end of the line had dissolved into panic, firing questions at me that I had no answers to. I locked the bedroom door. The click was deafening in the silence. I backed away from the door, heart slamming against my ribs. My eyes swept the room for an exit that wasn't there. The window, second floor. Her footsteps were on the stairs now, slow, measured. Not the light, nearly soundless movements I had grown up hearing. These steps had weight, flesh. She was stronger now. I had made her stronger. The humming stopped, right outside the door. Sweetheart. Her voice, my mother's voice, but something had crept into it, a thick, cloying sweetness that made my skin crawl. Are you in there? I was so worried. I woke up and the house was empty. I pressed my back against the far wall, hand clamped over my mouth to muffle my ragged breathing. I had a chat with your father, she called through the door. The sound was perfectly clear, as though she were standing right beside me. He called. He's so sorry, darling, for everything. He explained it all. He knows he was wrong for keeping us apart. Liar. Liar. He's gone. You know he's gone. He just said he needs a few days to clear his head, the sweet voice continued. But he's given us his blessing. He wants us to finally spend time together. Just you and me. Isn't that wonderful? Silence. I held my breath, praying she would think I wasn't there, that she'd just go away. I know you're in there, sweetheart. I can feel you. A pause. Come on now. Open the door. I'll make you pancakes, just like the old days. She had never made me pancakes. Please, son, don't push me away again. Not after you finally let me in. Everything will be different now. I'm here. I'll take care of you. We'll be a real family. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. A silence that lasted several agonizing heartbeats. Then a new sound. Soft, metallic. The door handle began to move. Slowly at first, then with greater force. I stopped breathing. It was trying to get in. Physically trying to get to me. I pressed back until my spine met the cold wall. The wood around the lock groaned under the pressure. My phone was in my pocket. Its weight became a sudden, desperate comfort. My hands were slick with sweat as I fumbled for it. My thumb hovered over the emergency call button. What would I even say? There's a woman in my house who looks and sounds like my mother, but According to my father's diaries, she died 15 years ago. And apparently she's a mimic that feeds on attention. They'd send an ambulance with a straitjacket, not a patrol car with armed officers. The rattling stopped. For one moment there was nothing, a deep, terrifying silence, and then a new sound began. A quiet, rhythmic scratching on the other side of the door, as though long fingernails were slowly, deliberately dragging along the grain of the wood, again and again. Patient, purposeful. I stopped caring how insane I would sound. I hit the call button. A calm voice answered. 911, what is your emergency? I cupped the speaker with my palm. My voice was a crushed, breaking whisper. There's someone in my house. In my house. I've locked myself in the upstairs bedroom. Can you describe them, sir? The dispatcher asked in a perfectly level voice. The scratching continued, a grotesque contrast to her professional calm. I can't. I haven't seen them. I can only hear them. They're right outside my door. Please hurry. A brief pause on the other end. Units are on their way. Sir, can you stay on the line with me? No, I whispered, eyes fixed on the door. I can't make any noise. I ended the call before she could respond. The scratching stopped the instant the call disconnected. As if it had heard. As if it knew. The silence that came back was somehow heavier than before. More threatening. It's waiting. It knows its time might be running out. Or maybe it's just enjoying this. I'm trapped in this room. I've called the police and I don't know if they can do anything at all. I don't know what they'll find when they arrive. What if it simply disappears before they get here? They'll find my father's diaries, see the state I'm in, and decide I'm the one who's lost his mind. But all I can do is wait for them. I'm writing this down, pouring it all out as fast as I can on my phone. I need someone to know the truth. I need you to know what really happened, in case they don't believe me, or in case something happens to me before they arrive. The Good Samaritan. My Corolla died 3 miles past the last exit. The engine seized with a shudder I felt in my own teeth. I coasted to the shoulder and sat in the dark. Semis blew past, rocking my car with their wake. My phone kept flickering between 1 bar of signal and none. The breakdown service dispatcher, a woman with a smoker's rasp, told me minimum 2 hours, possibly 3. A major accident had happened somewhere to the west, and every truck was there. There's a rest stop about a mile ahead, she said, if you want to wait somewhere with lights in a bathroom. I stared into the empty darkness beyond the windshield. I'll stay in the car. Suit yourself. Driver will call about 20 minutes out. The line went dead. I locked the doors, turned off the hazard lights to save the battery, and sat in the silence. A few minutes later, a white pickup pulled in behind me. A Ford, maybe 10 years old, work lights mounted on the roof rack. It sat there for a full minute before the door opened and a man climbed out. He was in his 50s, broad-shouldered denim jacket. He walked with the unhurried gait of a man with nowhere to be. He came to my window and made a circular gesture with his finger. Roll it down. I cracked it open about an inch. Car trouble? His voice was soft, the kind of voice people use for bedtime stories. A tow is already on the way. That's good. He nodded, squinting at the hood as though he could diagnose the problem from a distance. How long's the wait? 2 hours. 2 hours? He repeated the words as if tasting them. That's a long time to sit on the shoulder of a highway in the middle of nowhere. A beat. Do you have water? It cools down fast in the desert at night, but dehydration sneaks up on you quicker than you'd think. I'm fine, thank you. There's a rest stop a mile up. Vending machines, a restroom, lights. Safer than sitting here in the dark. I'll wait here. He smiled. His teeth were very white and very straight. The kind that cost real money. Smart. Don't trust strangers, that's smart. He gave the roof of my car 2 light pats, the way you'd pat a dog. My truck's parked up there at the stop if you need anything. White Ford. Name's Gary. He walked away without looking back. When his taillights disappeared, I realized I'd been holding my breath the whole time. The car had gone cold. I tried the ignition to run the heat. It coughed and died completely. The battery was gone. I got out and walked. The desert was surprisingly loud. Wind through the brush, a distant coyote, sand shifting against my jeans. The rest stop materialized on the horizon as a faint glow, then resolved into a concrete rectangle under tall floodlights. 2 big rigs were parked there, and the white Ford, right under the brightest lamp. Gary was sitting on a bench reading a paperback. He looked up and smiled like greeting an old friend. Changed your mind? Battery died. The hazards drained it. Happens faster than people think. He closed the book. An old Western. Water? Yes, thank you. He fed coins into the vending machine, pulled out a bottle, and held it out to me with both hands, like an offering. His fingers didn't touch mine. He stepped back immediately, keeping his distance, calculated, so I wouldn't be frightened. You didn't ask my name. Claire. Claire, pretty name, old-fashioned. We sat across from each other at a picnic table. Louis L'Amour? I asked. Mostly. My father loved them. Reminds me of him. Is he still alive? Died when I was 30. Heart attack. At least it was fast. A trucker came out of the bathroom, didn't look at either of us, climbed into his rig and drove away. We were alone. You're nervous, Claire, Gary said. It wasn't a question. I'm just tired. You're nervous because you're smart. A woman alone, middle of the night, a stranger being friendly. He nodded slowly. I tell my daughter the same thing. Trust your instincts. Be careful. The world isn't as safe for women as it is for men. Never has been. Good advice. Is it? He leaned forward slightly. Here's what I keep thinking, Claire. What good is caution if danger doesn't look like danger? If it looks like a guy in a denim jacket reading a book at a rest stop, like someone who just wants to help. I said nothing. My daughter, we don't talk. Her mother, before she died, left her a warning. She told her, keep away from your father. Don't be alone with him. Don't trust him. Why would she say that? Because she knew me better than anyone. He turned the book over in his hands. Claire, I drive this road every few weeks when I can't sleep. I always stop here. You want to know why? Why? Because cars always break down here. 40 miles of nothing in both directions. The signal barely works. Tow trucks take forever. And sometimes there's a woman out here alone and without help. And I see her car on the shoulder and I think, she's exactly the kind of person that bad things happen to out here. A pause. Wouldn't it be wrong not to help? That's very kind of you. No, it isn't. He set the book down. The kind thing would have been to drive past. Mind my own business. But I can't. I see a woman alone in the dark and I have to stop. I'm compelled to. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from an unknown number. On my way, 20 minutes out. Tao's almost here, I said. Good. Gary stood up. Walk with me. I'll wait here. He'll find me. Just to the edge of the light. I want to show you something. We walked to the edge of the lot where the floodlights cut off and the darkness of the desert began. Gary walked half a step behind me. I could hear his steady breathing. Right here, he said. I stopped. In the distance, I could see the highway. What am I looking at? Nothing. That's the point. You can't see anything from here. Someone back at the stop can't see us. Someone on the highway is moving too fast. We're invisible." I turned to face him. "I want to tell you something I've never told anyone." He put his hands in his pockets and I flinched involuntarily. He noticed. "I'm not going to hurt you, Claire. But I want you to understand who you've been sitting with for the past hour. Whose water you drank." He paused. "I've never harmed anyone. Not the way my daughter thinks. Not the way you're thinking right now." Another pause. "But I've thought about it more than anything else in my life. Since I was 14, I've imagined how it would go, the sound a person would make, what it would feel like in my hands. Would they fight, or go still, or beg? I've planned it. I've brought women to this exact spot and pictured it so clearly that sometimes I couldn't tell the difference between the fantasy and what was actually happening. I've mapped it all out." My feet had turned to concrete. Later, I would spend months asking myself why I didn't run. What was that paralysis? "Say something," Gary said. "What am I supposed to say?" "I don't know. That's the thing. I've never gone this far before. The other times I just talked to them and let them go. They'd drive away and never think about me again. Just the friendly guy at the rest stop. But tonight I wanted to say it out loud. For someone to know." He smiled, and that was the most frightening part. Because the smile looked genuine, warm. Maybe because you seem like someone who understands. You have that look about you, Claire. Like you know the world isn't what they paint it to be. My wife figured it out. Took her 20 years, but she did. Not what I'd done, because I hadn't done anything, but what I am. She saw it in my eyes. Something that isn't there in other people. She stayed with me because she thought she could fix me or save me. And when she was dying, when she realized she couldn't protect anyone anymore, she warned our daughter. She said, "Your father is a monster." A pause. "He never did anything, but he's a monster. Run." "And are you a monster?" Gary was quiet for a long time. "I don't know. I think about it constantly. What makes a person a monster? Their actions or their desires? If I live my entire life without harming anyone, am I still a monster simply because I wanted to? Because the only thing that ever held me back was fear, not conscience. I don't know either. See?" He took a step toward me. I stepped back. He stopped immediately. "That's the first time all night you've moved away from me. Why now?" "Because now I believe you." "Good. Right. You should believe me." He slowly withdrew his empty hands from his pockets. "Your toe is almost here. Head toward the highway. What will you do? Go home. Go to sleep. Tomorrow I'll drive out to estimate a bathroom remodel in Rancho Cucamonga." He smiled again. "That's the problem with people like me, Claire. We look just like everyone else. We do renovations and read westerns and help women on the side of the road. And most of the time, nothing happens because the circumstances weren't right, or the risk was too high, or we just decided not tonight. But the wanting, it never goes away, and you never know the truth until it's too late." He turned and walked back to his truck, unhurried. He got in, started the engine, and drove east toward home, toward the house where he lived alone. 10 minutes later, the tow truck arrived. The driver, a young guy, apologized for the wait. "Heck of a night," he said. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." I climbed into the cab and locked the door. "I'm just cold," I said. "Long wait." He talked the whole drive, about the accident, about his girlfriend. I didn't hear any of it. I was thinking about the daughter who believed her mother, about the wife who spent 20 years trying to save a monster. The battery on my car was jumped in 5 minutes. "You gonna make it?" the driver asked. "There's a gas station about 20 miles up. Get some coffee." "I'll make it." I pulled back onto the highway. In my rearview mirror, the rest stop shrank to a pinprick of light and then disappeared. I never told anyone about Gary. Not the police. Not my friends. Not a therapist. But I need someone to know what I would tell them. A man gave me water and talked to me. Nothing happened. And that was the most frightening part of all. Nothing happened. And I have nothing to prove. But somewhere in the next town over, a man with a soft voice is lying in the dark, thinking about the sound his victim will make, what it will feel like in his hands, whether she'll fight or go still or beg. And I will never know if that night was the last time he only imagined it.